Have you ever wondered why Filipinos point with their lips? It looks funny, right? Like a kiss thrown at a direction. Or why when they knock on a door they yell, Tao Po, which literally means person here. Is it just to say they aren't a ghost? Actually, yes. And what about Filipino time? Is being late just a bad habit? Or is it actually a form of passive resistance against Spanish forced labor that stuck around for 300 years? In this series finale, we aren't just looking at manners. We are decoding the survival instincts of a nation. We've covered the land, the people, the wars, and the myths, but today we explore the invisible rules that hold it all together. From the military origins of the Boodle Fight to the secret Chinese history of calling someone kuya, this is the story of how a people learned to navigate a world full of colonizers, spirits, and strict social hierarchies without losing their soul. Get ready for the final chapter. This is Part 10, The Origin of Social Etiquette and Social Norms. Let's start with the most famous Filipino quirk, lip pointing, or nguso. If you ask a Filipino for directions, they won't use their finger. They will pout their lips, raise their eyebrows, and lift their chin. It's efficient. It's silent. But why? The common answer is that it's just easier when your hands are full. But anthropologists and historians point to a deeper, more superstitious origin. In pre-colonial animist culture, the world was filled with nature spirits, nuno sa punso, or diwatas in the trees. Pointing your finger was considered aggressive. It channeled energy. If you pointed your finger at a tree or an anthill, you might accidentally offend a spirit. You might poke a dwarf in the eye. And the punishment? Illness, bad luck, or swelling. So the ancestors adapted. They used the lips. It's soft, it's vague, it's non-threatening. It's a way of navigating the physical world without disturbing the spiritual one. The superstition faded, but the muscle memory remained. It became a cultural code for politeness. And speaking of spirits, let's talk about knocking. When a Filipino knocks on a door, they say, Tao Po. The direct translation is, person, sir, ma'am, or I am a person. Now, think about that. Why do you need to announce that you are a human? Why not just hello? Because in the old world, the things knocking at your door weren't always human. We talked about the Aswang in Part 5. These shape-shifting monsters could look like animals or people, but they couldn't speak human languages perfectly. The phrase originated as Tao Po ako, hindi aswang, which is, I am a person, not a monster. It was a security clearance. It was a way to assure the homeowner that you weren't there to eat their liver. Over centuries, the not a monster part dropped off, leaving just Tao Po. So every time you visit a Filipino home and say that phrase, you are technically performing an ancient anti-monster ritual. It's a dopamine breadcrumb from a time when the night was full of terrors. And speaking of fears, do you have a superstition in your family that you still follow even if it seems silly? Comment below with your weirdest family superstition. Now, once you get inside the house, what do? You greet the elders. You take their hand, bow your head, and press their hand to your forehead. You say, Mano Po. This is the ultimate sign of respect. But is it Spanish or is it Filipino? Mano is Spanish for hand. So for a long time, people thought this was a colonial imposition, that the Spanish friars forced the Indios to kiss their hands as a sign of submission. And it's true, the friars did demand hand kissing. But the Filipinos, they hacked it. They blended it with a pre-colonial custom found in Malaysia and Indonesia called salim. In the ancient Malay world, bowing to an elder and sniffing or pressing their hand was a way to receive their bisa, energy, or blessing. So, when the Spanish arrived, the Filipinos took the Spanish word mano but kept the indigenous meaning. They aren't kissing the hand of a master. They are asking for the blessing of an elder. It's a transfer of wisdom. That's why you ask Pa bless Po. It's a perfect example of cultural survival. They took a symbol of colonial power, the hand, and turned it back into a symbol of family solidarity. And speaking of family, have you noticed how Filipinos call everyone ate or kuya, even the waiter, even the taxi driver? This isn't Spanish, and it is in Austronesian. It's Chinese. The words come from Hokkien. Kuya comes from ko, older brother, and a suffix for kinship. Koa became kuya. Ate comes from chi, eldest sister. Filipinos adopted these trade terms from Chinese merchants centuries ago and applied them to everyone. Why? Because of Kapwa. We treat strangers like kin. By calling the taxi driver kuya, you are verbally pulling him into your family circle. You are saying, "You are not a stranger, you are my brother." Now, let's go to the Sari store. These tiny convenience stores are everywhere, and you'll notice something unique. You can buy 1 cigarette, 1 packet of shampoo, 1 cup of cooking oil. This is called timbi culture. Why do Filipinos buy in such small amounts? It seems more expensive in the long run. The root is linguistic. Tingi comes from konting hingi, asking for a little. In pre-colonial barter trade, you didn't buy a whole sack of rice if you didn't need it. You negotiated for just what you needed for dinner. But in the modern era, this evolved into a survival strategy for the poor. It's the sachet economy. When you earn money daily, you spend money daily. You can't afford a $10 bottle of shampoo, but you can afford a 10-cent packet. But there is a dopamine twist here. Corporations realize this. Massive multinationals like Unilever and Nestle completely changed their manufacturing just for the Philippines. They sachetized everything. It's an example of how a local cultural habit forced global giants to adapt. But it's also a curse. The tingi culture creates massive plastic waste. Those millions of sachets end up in the ocean. It is a social norm born of resiliency that has become an environmental crisis. A habit that saved the pocket is now choking the planet. Now, the elephant in the room. Filipino time. Being 15, 30, or 60 minutes late to a party is considered normal. Westerners call it disrespectful. But historians suggest it might be a form of colonial resistance. During the Spanish era, Indios were forced to provide labor, polo y servicio. They had to build churches and ships for free. They hated it. So what did they do? They dragged their feet. They showed up late. They worked slowly. It was a way to reclaim agency. You own my body, but you don't own my time. This passive resistance became a cultural habit. Also, the principalia, the VIPs, would arrive late to mass or events to show their importance. The party doesn't start until I get there. So, Filipino time is a mix of agricultural pacing, where time is measured by the sun, not a watch, and a colonial hangover of rebellion and status signaling. It's annoying today, sure, but knowing it started as a screw you to the Spanish colonizers makes it kind of punk rock. Finally, let's talk about food. Not what they eat, which we did in part 3, but how they eat. Kamayan, eating with your hands. This is the pre-colonial default. It connects you to the food. You mix the rice and sauce with your fingers. It's intimate. The Americans tried to civilize this away with spoons and forks, and they partially succeeded, which is why Filipinos use a spoon and fork, never a knife. But Kamayan survived, and recently it evolved into something massive, the Boodle Fight. You've seen it, a long table covered in banana leaves, piles of rice, seafood, wheat, and fruit. Everyone stands shoulder to shoulder and eats with their hands. No plates, no utensils. But here is the aha moment. This is not an ancient tradition. It started in the military, specifically the Philippine Military Academy. It was a way to build camaraderie between cadets and officers. In a Boodle Fight, rank disappears. The general eats the same rice as the private. They stand side by side. The term boodle is actually American military slang for contraband sweets. So this traditional feast is actually a remix of American military culture and pre-colonial hand-eating, turned into a symbol of equality. It says, "We are all the same when we eat." So what is the lesson? What connects lip pointing, Tao Po, Boodle Fights, and Kuya? It's the concept we touched on in Part 4, Paki Ramdam, sensitivity, and Kapwa, shared self. Filipino social norms are designed to minimize friction. You point with your lips so you don't offend. You call strangers brother so they feel safe. You eat with your hands to show you aren't above anyone else. You say Tao Po to bridge the gap between the outside and the inside. It is a social operating system built for a high-context, crowded, collective society. It's about surviving together. It's about making sure that in a world of 7,000 islands and 100 languages, everyone feels like they belong. And that brings us to the end of our journey. We started with the tectonic plates that built the islands. We met the rhino hunters, the boat captains, the revolutionaries, and the mythical monsters. We tasted the adobo and decoded the flag. We found that the Philippines is not a story of a small country. It is a story of world history. It is where East met West, where Islam met Christianity, where the Pacific met Asia. It is a story of collision, of resilience, and an incredible capacity to take the foreign and make it their own. The Philippines is a lushong, a giant mortar. It pounds together Spanish, American, Chinese, and Austronesian ingredients to create something new, something delicious, something unbreakable. And that is it, the end of our 10-part saga. I hope you look at the Philippines differently now, not just as a vacation spot, but as a civilization with a deep, complex, and badass history. What was your favorite part of the entire series? Was it the Aswang psychology, the $20 million receipt, or finding out Tao Po is an anti-monster spell? Please leave a comment below. It helps the algorithm, but I also genuinely want to know. And if you learned something new, share this playlist with a friend. Thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and as they say in the Philippines, maraming salamat and mabuhay.